What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, bringing you the latest news from here in Taipei. Taiwan is marking the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, when Chinese troops opened fire on student democracy protesters in Beijing. That violence left hundreds, if not thousands, of people dead and brought China's democracy movement to a halt. Rick Lauert is in Taipei. Rick, how is Taiwan marking this anniversary?
So it's here in Taiwan's capital in Freedom Square, where people will gather to commemorate Tiananmen Square that happened on June the 4th, 1989. There's a democracy market being held here that's going to include democratic NGOs, human rights organizations. There's going to be speeches, performances and film screenings, and there's also going to be that candlelight vigil later this evening to remember those who were lost. Now, I'm joined by Casey Wong. He's a Hong Kong in exile artist, and he's also one of today's organizers. Casey, can you tell us why today's event is so important? What are you hoping to commemorate?
Well, 35 years ago, the Chinese Communist Party killed a lot of people in Beijing, in Tiananmen Square. Those people are yearning for freedom and democracy. We shall remember them.
And of course, you're from Hong Kong, where events like this are now completely outlawed. There's no way you could hold an event like this. Why is it important for Taiwan to continue to commemorate Tiananmen and to remember those that died there?
Well, Taiwan have a true freedom and democracy system in the society, with a constant threat from mainland China. I think Taiwan is picking up the torch to vanguard freedom and democracy.
Thank you, Casey. So with events like this, Taiwan and its leaders hope to show the difference between Taiwan, a democratic country, and autocratic Beijing next door, and to reiterate that Taiwan will not follow in the footsteps.
Thank you, Rick. That was Rick Lauert reporting live from Taipei, and we'll have more on Taiwan's Tiananmen anniversary events later in the day. Taiwan says 19 Chinese military aircraft were spotted operating around the country on Monday. 17 of those aircraft, along with 8 naval ships, crossed into Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. This area is used by the military for defensive purposes, but is not sovereign territory. Some of the aircraft came within 42 nautical miles from the north of Taiwan. Tensions in the Taiwan Strait have increased since the inauguration of President Lai Ching-te on May 20th. Taiwan has condemned a cyber attack on its diplomatic ally Palau and says it is working with the Pacific nation to beef up its cybersecurity. Now, according to the New York Times, more than 20,000 documents were stolen in this attack, including hundreds detailing Palau's relationship with Taiwan. Now, Palau claims that China orchestrated the hack, but Beijing denies this, and a ransomware group called Dragon Force has claimed responsibility. To get a better understanding of what this is all about, Jaime Ocon spoke to Alan Liska, an intelligence analyst from Recorded Future.
So Alan, the New York Times is reporting that almost 20,000 documents were leaked online, things like secret military locations and even information about Taiwan's diplomatic relationship with Palau, one of few. Now, Palau is accusing China, but what do you make of this attack? How significant is this?
For the people of Palau, it's a very big deal. And for the people who pass through Palau, because some of the information that appears to have been leaked is passport information, diplomat information. And Palau is a very, very important country in the ASEAN area. And I do think this is part of a broader trend that we're seeing where island nations in the Asian Pacific and in the Caribbean have been hit very hard with ransomware over the last couple of years. And in general, it's indicative of a broader problem. So in fairness, China goes after everybody, no matter how good or bad their cybersecurity is. But what we're seeing is, we don't know for sure in this case. We don't have enough evidence to say one way or the other. And I want to be very clear on that. But it wouldn't be the first time that we have seen nation-state actors use ransomware as a cover for other types of activity.
So you mentioned ransomware. Can you kind of explain what that is and how a cyber attack like this one was carried out?
When we talk about this, there's sort of 3 stages to a ransomware attack. You have the initial access, so they get into the network. Then you have the operator who carries out the attack, the encryption and the data theft. And then most ransomware groups, what they have is they have a data extortion site. And yes, that site is usually on the dark web. And that is how they use that. That's part of their extortion tactics, If you're not going to pay to have your files decrypted, then you're going to pay to not have your data leaked to our extortion site. And it is obviously very concerning having that out there. It does absolutely put the nation of Palau at a disadvantage, and it hurts them. Now, as far as other countries not cooperating, that has not been the case. In fact, generally, we see other countries stepping up to help countries like Palau that have been hit. And in fact, that's what we've seen here, where we've seen Taiwan offer to help. We've seen Australia offer to help. We see countries kind of coming together to try and help each other out when we see this kind of attack happen.
So with that being said, do you think that we're going to see more of these attacks happen in the future? And is this going to be part of a trend?
And the problem is that we're seeing this convergence of cybercriminal activity and nation-state activity. And we're seeing an explosive growth in both, which means that you have to defend against everything. And so again, when you're a small nation like Palau, you don't have the resources that Taiwan or Singapore or Japan or many of the bigger countries in the ASEAN area have to defend themselves, and that's unfortunate, but that's kind of the reality where we are right now, and the bad guys aren't going away.
That was intelligence analyst Alan Liska from Recorded Future speaking to our reporter Jaime Ocon. South Korea plans to call a public UN Security Council meeting on human rights abuses in North Korea. The move is likely to face opposition from China and Russia, who say the Security Council is not the right forum for human rights discussions. The council last met publicly on the issue last August. Closed-door discussions were held from 2020 to 2022. South Korea's UN ambassador says human rights abuses in North Korea do belong on the Security Council's agenda.
The advancement of the DPRK's WMD program is closely intertwined with the dire human rights and humanitarian situation in the country. The Security Council should not neglect the latent risks that systematic human rights violations in DPRK pose to international peace and security.
There's a new leader at the helm of the world's most influential chipmaker. TSMC has confirmed engineer turned CEO C.C. Wei as its new chair, along with a new board of directors. This all comes at a pivotal time as the firm expands overseas. Joyce Sung has the latest.
It's a new chapter for Taiwan's most valuable company, TSMC. The world's largest contract chip maker has just confirmed a major leadership reshuffle here at its annual general meeting with a new chairperson and board of directors. CEO C.C. Wei now sits at the top of TSMC's leadership, steering the main chip-making partner for hundreds of tech firms, including giants like Apple and NVIDIA. His predecessor, Mark Liu, is retiring, opting not to stay on as a board member. In his final address here as chair, he expressed the continual need to adapt, given the company's ongoing expansion overseas.
无论是在美国、在日本，最近在德国，我们都是必须用新的方法、新的地方，在新的社会文化中建立台积公司新的制造基地。
Meanwhile, Wei pledged to work closely with customers to help push the latest AI trends forward, which run on advanced chips like TSMC's.
我们持续专注业务基本面，与客户密切合作，根据长期市场需求规划产品，并持续投资半导体制程技术。
TSMC is at a critical juncture as it sets up factories overseas. Tens of billions of dollars are on the line. This past February, TSMC opened its first Japan fab in Kumamoto. But it's the troubles it faces in the U.S. that people have been watching. The firm has run into culture clashes in Arizona, which has delayed its launch despite starting construction a year before its Japan fab. Now, resolving these issues looms large for its new leadership. And though execs here today did not address exactly how they aim to smooth out these problems, they did say that, like with their business in Taiwan, there was a learning curve, and that TSMC will learn and overcome this challenge as well. Chris Ma and Joyce Sun in Hsinchu City for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's housing market is heating up, with more units bought and sold recently than last year. Housing transactions in Taipei, Taoyuan, and Tainan totaled more than 10,000 in May, a 23% rise year on year. It was the highest single-month figure for May in over a decade. And as major tech companies expand their operations in southern Taiwan, demand for housing has grown in Tainan, Jiayi, and Kaohsiung, with prices going up too. It's been 6 weeks in the making and in sweltering heat. The world's biggest election is almost over. Vote counting is now underway in India. Sally Jensen is reporting us from the capital, New Delhi. Sally, the ruling party was widely expected to win. What do we know so far?
Well, actually, we're still receiving counts. The counts are still coming in, but it's looking like early trends are showing that the ruling party-led National Democratic Alliance is set to win a majority of seats in the lower house of parliament and could form a majority government. But the opposition has made gains since the last election in 2019. Now, we're outside incumbent Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party headquarters in New Delhi. And so far, he has not remarked on these early vote counts. But he may not win the supermajority that he had been hoping for of around 400 seats in the 543-seat parliament. He may not even make the 303 seats that his party won in the last election. Meanwhile, the opposition, the main opposition party or Congress, they may have doubled their share of seats in the party. And remember that this is the world's biggest election in a historic year worldwide for elections. We've seen world record-breaking voter turnout here with 642 million people showing up to polling stations across the country, as you say, amid extreme levels of heat. On the last day of voting, 33 polling staff were killed by this heat. Nonetheless, you know, this shows how important this democratic process is to Indians. And Narendra Modi has been polling highly, which is why these initial results are rather surprising, as he has been achieving around 75% of approval across the country in the weeks leading up to the election.
So if Modi does win another term, what will be his main challenges?
Well, so he has he said he's spent around $400 billion in welfare. But nonetheless, the opposition may have made inroads with voters this time by saying that he has not addressed issues of poverty and unemployment, particularly in southern states, which are more likely to vote for the opposition. He is also, some of the reasons that they may have made more gains is he has very ambitious economic goals. He wants to make India the world's third biggest economy. As right now, it's the fifth biggest economy. And so he will have to contend with these issues, while the opposition is also accusing him of not addressing human rights concerns. India's Muslim minorities are complaining of increased harassment and even violence, which have concerned human rights groups abroad. And all of this, he will have to manage sometimes tense relations with the giant neighbor China next door, where there have been military scuffles and also even violence at the border. So if it does turn out that the opposition has been successful in persuading voters that a third consecutive term for Narendra Modi would not be good for democracy, he may have to, if it turns out that this is true, he may have to work hard to fix these cracks if he wants to maintain this perfectly managed image as a man of the people.
Thanks for that update, Sally. That was Sally Jensen reporting from India, and we'll have more on India's election results later on TaiwanPlus News. Thanks for joining us this afternoon on What's Up Taiwan. Before we go, check out this humpback whale that rescuers helped get untangled from fishing gear near Australia. I'm Eric Gao. Take care. Have a great day.